if you do not feel comfortable participating in a workshop that's being recorded, that's okay, because we will be posting this later. But we hope that you stick around with us and go through this process. All right, so this workshop is about agility. We're revisiting some of the things we did in the past, but we're going to talk about it in terms of this fall and ask how can we design in an agile way, but also in a very realistic way. Our goals for today are going to be that we revisit agile design, that we identify the key concepts from the previous workshops so that we can think about how they fit into this format and synthesize what we've learned, but also to develop a +1 plan for various stages of fall to see what we can do to use what we've come to learn together over the past 3 days. There are a few guidelines that we want to talk about. These are things that we've talked about in previous workshops. So if you've been connected with us before, you've heard this. This is an inclusive space. So because of the way that we have it set up, you can't turn your cameras on. But even if you could, we would say that you don't have to if you don't want to. Please note that we want you to be able to participate in ways that are comfortable for you. So we invite you to place things in the chat box. We invite you to send private messages to either Elizabeth or I. We invite you to not if you don't want to. Please share as you're comfortable doing. We'll be sending the slides out later, but you can also take screenshots as you need. As I noted, this session is going to be recorded, but we want to respect the privacy of everyone that's here. As I noted as well, that the chat is fully functional. And so that means you can send private messages to one another, which is wonderful, and we encourage that as well. But we also want to, I guess, give the slight disclaimer. It's not so much true for WebEx, but if you are using Zoom, things that you put in the private chat are actually captured in the full chat. So what is said privately is not actually private. The reason that we include that, even though we're using WebEx, is we think that that's an important message for you to send to your students if you do choose to use Zoom. So as we jump in, let's stop to revisit what we talked about before. Last spring really reinforced the fact that things change quickly. And it was rough in August. Let's be completely and totally honest. It was rough. It was quick. The students went through some awkward experiences. We went through some awkward experiences. We did really well for the circumstances, but that doesn't change the fact that it was not an easy time for any of us. Back in June, we started to talk about the Agile design process. And what we were really focusing on when we were doing that was, how do you design for different situations? How do you design for different learners? How do you help to make yourself agile so that you can adjust quickly as things change, as learners change, as needs change? How can you do that quickly and in real time so it becomes less stressful? One of the great attributes of agile design is that you know you're going to put the time in. You either put the time in as you're designing at the beginning, or you have to put it in the middle as things shift. So that's the perspective that we're coming from as we talk about how do we bring everything we've done together this week into an agile format. So as I noted, in June, we took this up, but we took it up in terms of asynchronous, synchronous, and face-to-face environments. And we asked you, how can you design your courses so that students can interact in any one of these spaces at any given time? And the reason for that was, if you design for the toughest space, you can actually use that to enhance what you do in other spaces. In other words, or as an example, if you design for a well-designed asynchronous space, a transparent asynchronous space is something that you can then import into a remote class or even to a face-to-face environment. And it actually enhances what you do in those environments because you're being more transparent, you're being more inclusive, and you're explaining what you do, and it helps your students to really engage that much more. Our goal back then was to prepare for an uncertain fall. And fortunately, we do have a bit more certainty, even though we aren't sure where things are going to go in the coming days. And I think we're going to learn even more this afternoon in the state of the university. But we can still think about how we can approach our classes in an agile way. And we can still think about how we can be even more inclusive, how we can create even more welcoming spaces, no matter what the environment is, and no matter what the situation is. And it's with this in mind that Elizabeth and I are going to bring this forward, and we're excited about this. And we're excited to talk about how to design for these situations. And we thank you for joining us today. Elizabeth, do you have anything you would like to share at this point?
I want to definitely thank everybody for participating this week and joining us at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning.
Elizabeth, your voice isn't coming through.
What about now?
Still not coming through. Okay, everyone else can hear you, so it works.
All right. Sorry. Um, Fantastic. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and definitely, I want to really emphasize the point that we really need to remain agile and really need to remain um, flexible. So that's going to mean that we need to keep the bigger picture in mind as we're designing. And really, the main point of that bigger picture is our students getting the content that they need to be successful moving forward. Um, that needs to stay and remain our focus. Sometimes it's going to be awkward for us, sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable for us, sometimes it's going to mean us waking up early or going to sleep late. But when we are transparent with our students and we let them know that we're learning this process too, we're here with them, that makes their learning experience so much more rich and engaging. And so, as we're moving forward, specifically in this workshop, we're going to go over the things that we covered this week. So, if you missed anything or something doesn't sound familiar, recordings have already gone out, and next week we will be posting everything to CTL Online, which is now an open organization, which means that you can join it at any time. Um, and if you're having a hard time doing that, we'll be posting resources on how to do that. Um, but we want to set you up with a plan. And that's what this workshop is about. It's about, yeah, we've covered a lot of great information, but sometimes we get overwhelmed. And so let's think about the one thing that we can do today, the one thing that we can do tomorrow. What can we do in the middle of the semester? So as you're hearing these things, we're setting up time for you to process. We're setting up time for you to um, set yourself up and your students up for a win. So process with us and make sure that you have a pen and paper with you if that's how you process best. Okay. All right, Jeremy, go ahead.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we're going to start off by talking about the first workshop that we had, which was trauma-informed pedagogy. Some of the key things that came through in that one, we discussed the way that trauma affects us. When we're going through trauma, it's going to affect our sleep patterns. For some of us, it will be sleeplessness. For others, it's going to be oversleeping. Trauma will obviously increase anxiety, and it can create a situation where you feel helpless or panicked. It can really create depression. Other problems are that it can create an unwillingness to engage with others or the inability to prioritize or manage your time. It can create trouble with rational and critical thinking, and the a decreased ability to deal with change and a decreased motivation. And all of these things are so important to classroom success. If our students are having a hard time engaging, if they're having a hard time prioritizing what to do, if they're having a hard time picking up a critically uh, picking up critical thinking, that's going to definitely affect what they do in our classrooms. And so we need to plan for this. We need to acknowledge that trauma is real and that our students and that we have been going through a trauma filled experience. The key points from this were that if you are taking up a trauma informed approach, you're going to prioritize safe spaces. You're going to prioritize finding ways to increase trust and transparency so that your students know you're not going to change the rules on them. You're going to empower them since they feel as though everything's out of control. You're going to work to create collaborative spaces since our students feel alone. And also, you're going to reinforce that we're in this together by creating community. All of these things are important parts of trauma informed pedagogy. So, what we would like to you to do is this is going to be a really quick reflection. So, take a minute or two, think about some of the ways that you're applying what we talked about in the trauma informed pedagogy workshop in your class, ways that you've seen them in your classroom, and what you're doing to apply what we've learned. So, 2 minutes for this. Please think about it and place your thoughts in the chat. Please know, as Elizabeth said, if you weren't in the workshop, that's fine. We will be sending those out. If you were in the workshop, just tell us a little bit about what you learned. That was a huge one. Thank you. Just being open to discussion, acknowledging what we were going through, and reflecting and supporting our students. Excellent. Thank you, Nancy. Other thoughts? Awesome. I love the way, Beverly, you're talking about it creating more community. Excellent. And making those safe spaces. That's so important. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, it's important to think that trauma, or to rethink what trauma is. Just because it isn't some of the ways that we've traditionally identified trauma, we are still going through this and reinforcing what's happening is something that's an important part. Empowering our students is an important part of what we're doing together. So thank you for these thoughts. With that, though, we are going to jump out to the next of the workshops.
So when we were talking about the navigating through Blackboard Ultra, we discussed the difference between the Ultra experience, which as a university we have all open and we are all currently using. When we enter into Blackboard, it's the main navigation, it's that home page, it's how we access our courses now. That's the Ultra experience. The Ultra course view is something that we are implementing over a long period of time. So you will have until summer 2021 to make that full transition to your individual courses. Right now, that is something that you need to request to have. The main reason why we did that was because we know that there's a lot going on, and we want to make sure that this transition is as smooth as possible for you as instructors and for our students. You can request a sandbox to get used to the new layout so that you have a place to develop and learn the new system. And really, the main reason why we made the switch is to access, to build, to design for accessibility and implementing UDL. Can you go to the next slide for me? So while we've gone through a number of workshops, we've got two more workshops. Right after this, we've got one going over discussion forums, and then later this afternoon, we've got one going over the grade book. I want you to think about what are some of the ways you can apply the Ultra experience and the Ultra course view into your course, but really even think beyond the tool itself. Think about the accessibility. Think about content focused, student focused design. Even if you're in the original view, how are you going to build a course that is student focused in a fully online setting? Okay, go ahead and enter those things into the chat. Make sure that you're writing it down. That's really what this workshop's about. We want to make sure that we're providing you with tools to move forward. This is some really great stuff. Building community by having students introduce themselves through a variety of media. Definitely opening up those options for them. Um, Nancy, moving your class to Ultra this semester. I know that we've been working on that. Um, Needing to reformat focuses. It's definitely it has opened a different lens to a lot of people that are currently going through the redesign. And so as we step through this transition, please keep a very open mind and get let yourself be creative. Jeremy, I think we're good to move to the next one. Oh, this is me again. Can you actually go back one slide? So accessibility and UDL. So we had Leo and Dania come in from accessibility services, and it was really fantastic because here's some main points. One, it provide a specific point of contact for those our students that have accessibility needs. It gave us a general overview of the resources that are available for our students and for yourself as an instructor so that you can better support the students. And it also covered the foundational concepts of UDL. Now, if you've been in previous workshops with us, we can go to the next slide, Jeremy. If you've been in previous workshops with us before, we talk about UDL often. It is the universal design for learning, and it's about opening up just our everyday teaching practices um, to a wider audience, making sure that we are putting things in place that even if our students don't disclose that they have uh, special needs or have a learning disorder or anything like that, even if they don't disclose it, we're still going to set them up for a win, and we're going to cover a wide range of um, of tools that are available to them. Now, this doesn't mean outside tools that we're pulling in. It means opening up closed captioning on the videos that we're already using. It means providing readable PDFs so that they can use the screen readers that they're used to. It means that we are being mindful about the different things that we are posting. If we're posting an image, we're adding that alternate text. And so Blackboard Ultra has actually provided us with a lot of skills and a lot of tools to make things accessible. But even when we are doing face-to-face um, when we get back to face to face, it's providing your students with a little bit of a heads up so that they can prepare if they need to speak in front of the class. Being mindful of our introverts, being mindful of our extroverts, and knowing that if we have somebody in our class, whether it's synchronous, asynchronous, or face to face, if they're being quiet, that doesn't mean they're not engaged. And then that's just being designing our class well. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Where we're going to reflect. So I want you to take some time and just go through these questions and go ahead and type them in the box, and definitely take notes for yourself. Specifically, how do you see yourself applying what was discussed in that specific workshop to your class, maybe even your thinking process when you're designing new things. Students are training for students is being provided for Blackboard Ultra if you are using Ultra in your course. We will provide you with resources, and that's something that Misty and the ASC have been developing over the summer. And so we have been working nonstop this summer to make sure that we have you set up. John, I love that. I love creating assignments that use multimedia for students so that they can do the essay or they can create the video, or maybe it's even recording themselves to better to, to build a better essay for them.
Thank you as well for the reference to Love on the Spectrum. I haven't heard about that, but I look forward to watching that.
It's good.
Dr. Neal, Matthew Neal, I think that that is a great point as well. It does open up ways that we can be creative too. That is an excellent point. Thank you. In the next workshop that we wanted to talk about, we dealt with building community. One of the things that we noted in this workshop was that when we made the quick switch to face-to-face or to the electronic environment, a lot of our students said they wanted a WebEx environment. They wanted a Zoom environment. They wanted something that resembled the face-to-face. And as Melissa Wheeler noted, what they were actually asking for was community. They wanted to feel like they still belonged. They wanted to feel like were still connected to their classmates and to their university. And so this is something we can still do even though we are not in a synchronous or face-to-face environment. So some of the key points that we discussed when we were talking about community is that you can build it at multiple levels before and during class. In a professor to student situation, you can send out welcome notes. You can create welcome videos so that your students get to know you. And you during class, you can make sure that you're available and actually present in these situations so they can get your feedback and know that you are a meaningful part of the community as well. For student to student, you can encourage pre-semester icebreakers that are safe and allow students to get to know each other. During the course, you can ask students to not only work with you, but work together through group work or even encourage back channel discussions where they can informally connect, which leads to the next one we talked about, informal community. How do you create those spaces where students can interact without you curating the discussion? It could be a discussion board where you say, hey, this is your place to talk about anything and everything you want to talk about. Or it could be something where you find a place to just open up a space for them, even if it's just if you're doing a synchronous session, starting it early, walking away so your students can chat with each other informally. We also talked about ways to create community for the entire community, ways to structure it so that it's not just you and one student. So it's not just a small group of students, but that it is the entire course that comes together, or that you're connecting with the university at large. So there's a lot of different ways that you can set up community, a lot of different ways that you can make sure that our students are feeling connected to not only their students in the class, but the students across the university system. So we're going to give you a moment to quickly reflect and respond. What were some of the ways that you saw that you could apply these and other community building manners to your classroom experiences? How do you see yourself creating community in your classes as we move forward? Please take a couple minutes to write them down, share them, and place them in the chat. I love some of the things that are coming up here. We do need to create these spaces, and we do need to find ways to help our students connect. We do need to make sure that we are being clear about how to do it. We do need to make sure that our students know that they're in this with others and that we're providing support. There are so many ways to connect, not only in our classes but around our classes and to the greater experience. And I love that you are finding ways to think about community not just as a physical environment but as a way to share and as a way to interact and reinforce relationships.
So we've also had the opportunity this week to go over, we've been doing these 30-minute, um, you know what, probably workshops is the wrong word. More like tool mm, tool chats. Yeah, maybe, where we have gone over creating welcome sections in our courses, creating, adding content, building assignments, building tests. Again, after this session, we will be going over discussion forums, and then this afternoon we'll be going over the gradebook in Ultra. And and it's really been an opportunity for me to kind of power through things, but also to show you what Ultra is capable of. And while I love to show you what this new tool is capable of, really my main focus has been to open up your mind about how you are creating the content, being more design focused rather than tool focused. This is the tool that we're using right now, and so I want to make sure that you are empowered to have success with it and have set your students up with success with it. But especially with assignments, thinking about using assignment tool in a different way and making sure that um, we are getting creative, exactly like Matt said. um, we are a community of extremely creative people, from the sciences to the humanities to College of Law. That is why we are in education, to learn, to grow, and to be creative. And so these have been really fun to do, and to show you how the different things are functioning in this new system. Um, if you want, I don't think we have a. Do we have a? Yeah, let's go ahead and go to the reflect. So if you've attended any of these sessions, um, are there tools that you've changed your mind about? Are there things that you want to start implementing? Do you want to get a sandbox and start playing with it, um, and see what it is, or are you ready to take that jump for fall? Go ahead and enter that into the chat, please. Closed captioning has put it into Japanese. There's actually a number of tools where students can make videos. Flipgrid is a good one. Um, we're looking at a couple of different university licenses for things like Panopto and Play Post It. There's You can do screencast it, Loom. There's a number of tools where students can make videos. And even within Blackboard itself, you do have the ability with Ultra. It does, I believe, have the ability to do like a single shot video that you can just upload directly to Blackboard for students. Yeah, everything, all of the sessions were recorded, and so, and that's why I went through them kind of fast. But I definitely did want to make sure that you were able to see how tools were being used in different ways. And Teresa and Nancy specifically, I want to thank you because you have worked so diligently over this summer with me and Bev on how to, we've kind of hit some of those rocky roads together and been able to test things out. I think we're good. Yeah.
So at this point in time, we've covered a lot of different things. We've talked about all of the different workshops, and you can see once again just how much we have worked together over these past few days. So here's the situation: when you have this type of work, when you've put this type of thought into your courses, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed. It can be easy to say, how am I supposed to use all this? What am I supposed to do next? I don't know what to do, and get a little bit of paralysis analysis. And so what we're going to ask you to do now is to stop, take a breath, and to turn back to who you are and what you're trying to do in your classes. What is your course? What are your learning goals? What are you actually trying to accomplish? There's a lot of things that you can do, but what's most important are to do the things that enhance your learning goals and then enhance the needs of what your students are doing and what you want your students to accomplish. Not every tool is going to fit that, and the bright and shiny isn't always going to be what you need. And so that's why we're also asking you to remember the +1 method. This is something that we reinforced a lot in our No Pressure Book Club back in the fall when we read Reach Everyone, Teach Everyone. And it's a concept that you don't have to change everything all at once. You need to change one thing. And once you've changed that one thing, look and see how it worked. If it's working well, wonderful. Then change one more thing. And through the process, you begin to make great changes to your courses, great changes to your interactions, and you begin to do big things. But it all starts with the small +1. And so that's where we're going to go from here. We want you to keep in mind the +1 and talk about how you can make use of this in your classes with all the different things that we talked about. So what we would like you to do, and we're going to give you, I think, 5 minutes on this one because this is a little bit bigger. But take a look at the things that you wrote down about all the different workshops. Take a look at the things that you took away from it and the ways that you're already starting to think about enacting what you've experienced. Look at those, ask yourself, what connections do you see? And then ask yourself, what is significant about those connections? As I said, this is a big one since it's one of our synthesis questions. So take a look, 5 minutes, start to place your thoughts in the chat box. I agree, Nancy. They really do complement each other. A lot of these things do blend over, and it's great that you're seeing that. Thank you. We have a couple more minutes. Wonderful things are being placed in the chat. Thank you. A couple more minutes to say what you see in terms of connections and what the significance is. Yes, thank you for that. It is so important that we develop trust as soon as possible and that we devote time at the beginning of our courses to devote trust. If, if we don't have that relationship, everything else is doomed to fail. So thank you. So let's talk about how we can move this forward. So, based on the things that we've discussed today, based on the things that you learned, based on the connections that you're seeing, what is one change that you can make or one activity that you can add today to get yourself and your students ready for the fall? We're going to go 5 minutes on this one as well. Once you've thought about something that you want to do, place it in the chat.
John, I like the use of surveys. That seems cool.
Ungraded activities are great, and sharing and creating spaces where students can practice and you build trust with them. That's wonderful. couple more minutes. What are some ways that you want to connect and use what you've done or what you've learned with your students even prior to the beginning of the fall? Sometimes the best survey tool is the one that's easiest for your students to use. So, what are your final thoughts? What do you want to do right away with what you've learned? You have about 30 more seconds, so get those last thoughts in there. One of the things we recognize is that this is a lot of hard thinking, so we are going to ask you to please share your ideas with us after this as well. You can email us at ctl@laverne.edu, and we want to keep sharing and growing as a community. I love that, listening to students more and adjusting to their needs accordingly as much as you can. Sometimes you can't take care of everything, but you can do your best. So thank you. So beyond before class, once things start, what's an idea that you have about what you can do to make one change or to add one activity to the first week of courses? Building in time to recoup and recharge. That's a great idea. Excellent. Building in a formal introduction in that first week, and making sure that your students know how to actually use Ultra. That is what you need to do to make sure they can be successful, particularly for those that have never used it before. Thank you.
Yeah, and even if you're still in the original course view, taking time to get your students oriented to one, your specific class, and two, what it looks like to be an online learner. Giving them some time management tools, letting them know this is your expectations for the weekly setup. Definitely taking that time is a fantastic tool.
I like that, taking that time to be transparent about the purpose of Ultra so that students know that it's not just something that you're doing, but it's being done for a reason. Hi, Teresa. I really like that idea of bringing a librarian in that first week. That's a great way to reinforce the broader community, that entire sense of community. Just a couple more minutes. Go ahead and get your ideas down. Start to think about what you can do that first week. Definitely giving your students choice in what's going to happen in the course, whether it's your texts, whether it's the assignments, whether it's the way to complete assignments. Anything you can do to empower students that way is excellent. That's important too, being inclusive of all of our students and understanding that our international students may not be working on the same time frame. If you can find a way to compensate for that, that's wonderful. You're showing them that they're valued as well. Excellent. So while we've talked about the things you can do before class and the things you can do that first week, we're going to ask you to try and think of one change or activity that you can do for the remainder of your class. What's one thing that you might want to do to enhance the experience and enhance the learning after the first week? Yeah, we can definitely all feel a bit overwhelmed right now. I totally understand. This is something that is going to continue long after this. One thing that was shared behind the scenes is providing ways of doing video presentations. Excellent. That's excellent. Fostering activity on discussion boards and being creative and finding ways to encourage students to participate. Wonderful.
WebEx Teams and even Microsoft Teams are fantastic tools to provide your students with a sense of accessibility, not just with you as the instructor, but with each other as well. So it really helps cut down that isolated feeling that sometimes we feel when we are either on lockdown or just too busy.
A couple more minutes, friends. And I definitely agree. Video feedback, vocal feedback are wonderful ways of making sure that your students know your tone. Matthew, I like that idea. Finding ways to give your students a choice about how they want to reflect. That can be a great thing. It doesn't always have to be done in writing. Um, we realize that so much of this can feel overwhelming, and it can feel like there is just so much to do between now and when the course starts, or when now and the end of fall. And there's going to be a lot of changes as we move forward. But please just remember, you don't have to do everything at once. Keep your learning goals in mind. Choose the thing that you want to do next. Do it well, and see if it works. This is a safe space for us as well. Not everything we try is going to work, and that's fine. But if we try something and it does work, that's something we can incorporate in the future. And that's one fewer change we need to make then. Elizabeth, what are your thoughts?
I definitely want to encourage the thought process that it's okay to try something and evaluate if it's working or not. Not just for your students, but also for you. And if it's not working, it's not a failure. It's an opportunity to try again. And that's give yourself the space, give your students the space. Definitely make sure you have open communication with them. Um, and remember to breathe. Remember to breathe. It's important.
Well, we're coming up on the end of our time together. It's been another wonderful workshop. This too, as we said, has been recorded, and we'll make sure and share it with all of you. We want to also remind you that if you have questions or would like to chat further, please do email us at ctl@laverne.edu. And please know that we are trying to respond to everyone in a timely manner. We receive a lot of emails right now, but we're doing our best. Also, please watch your inbox for the weekly CTL emails so that you can see what we're doing in the coming days. We're going to have a full slate of workshops. We're going to have our reading groups. We're going to have our learning communities. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that we are connecting and growing together. And even if you don't want to do those things, you can always join us for our weekly CTL coffee, where we can just sit back and chat. I hope that you're doing well, and we hope that you are taking care of yourself and that you are finding your ways to not only breathe, but to just be.
Yes.
We are looking forward to continuing working with you in the future. And we ask that you just keep trying. We're all in this together, friends. Teresa, thanks for the question. Friday morning coffees are going to start back up again next week.
We just took this week off because of all the workshops.